You know that feeling, right? When someone criticizes you. And I'm not talking about a gentle, polite suggestion. I mean a direct, zero hesitation hit to your ego.
Oh, absolutely. The worst.
Right. Your heart starts racing, your cheeks get all hot, and your brain just immediately floods with like a dozen different defensive arguments. It is a completely universal, almost biological reaction to defend yourself.
That's basically human nature.
Exactly. But what if the ultimate measure of your character wasn't how well you defended yourself, but your ability to completely suppress that defense mechanism, even when you were entirely in the right?
That is the million-dollar question.
It really is. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a highly demanding framework for personal evolution. It was written by Shui Feng in February 2017, translated by Kinyu and edited by Peter. And the text is titled, "A Good Upbringing and Self-Cultivation Are Required in the New Oasis for Life, and Self-Restraint is Also Required."
I mean, the title itself really lays out the blueprint we're exploring today. This isn't just, a casual philosophical essay. It's a very rigid, structural guide for human behavior.
Yeah, it doesn't pull any punches.
Not at all. The author is essentially arguing that harmonious community living is completely impossible unless every single individual reaches a profound level of emotional mastery.
And let's unpack this, because we are diving into exactly how this text argues humans should handle emotional turbulence, specifically when dealing with criticism from others. It lays out this fascinating behavioral ladder.
Right, a ladder for personal development.
Exactly. But before we get to the core focus, which is self-restraint,
Right.
the author establishes two foundational rungs. I'm looking at these first two: upbringing and self-cultivation. So upbringing seems like the bare minimum, right? Like the don't chew with your mouth open rule book we learn as kids. But how does the text separate that basic socialization from self-cultivation?
Well, the text draws a really sharp line between passive socialization and active refinement. So upbringing, as you mentioned, is defined as civilized politeness.
Just the basics.
Right. It's handed to you by your family, your school, society in general. It's the basic social contract required just to exist around other people.
Makes sense.
But the author gives a rather stark warning about this. If you lack this basic upbringing, people will look at you with disgust.
Oh, wow, disgust. That's a strong word.
It is. It's a visceral rejection. But then self-cultivation, on the other hand, is a conscious, active pursuit. The text defines it as a civilized attitude toward others that you build yourself.
Build yourself how exactly?
Well, through theory, knowledge, art, and deep thought.
Okay, so that implies a serious level of intellectual curiosity. Like, if upbringing is learning not to shout in a library, self-cultivation is actually, reading the books in the library to broaden your worldview.
That is a great analogy, actually, yes. And the consequence of lacking self-cultivation is different from upbringing. The text says if you lack it, you will be despised.
Wait, despised.
Yep.
Despised.
That feels like a significant shift from disgust.
It really is. Because disgust is a reaction to a broken social rule. Someone burps at the table, you're disgusted. But being despised is a judgment on your character and your mind.
Right. It implies people see you as willfully ignorant or unrefined.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. Even if you have mastered both of those, even if you're perfectly polite and highly educated, the author argues you still aren't fully equipped for the highest levels of communal living.
You still need that third rung.
You still need the third rung.
Which brings us to the main event, self-restraint. The text defines this as the ability rooted in profound morals to control one's emotions. And if you lack this, people won't necessarily be disgusted by you or even despise you, but they will keep you at a respectful distance.
Yes, the respectful distance.
I like to think of a person like a house here.
Okay, I'm tracking with you. Upbringing is the basic foundation poured by your family and society, right? It keeps you out of the mud. Self-cultivation is the interior design and the architecture. It's the art, the knowledge, the beautiful things you fill the house with to make it a pleasant place to be.
Oh, I like that.
But self-restraint. That is the weatherproofing.
Yep.
It is the structural integrity of the entire building. You can have a beautifully decorated house on a solid foundation, but if the windows shatter the second the wind blows, nobody's going to want to shelter there with you.
They will definitely keep their distance.
Exactly.
And, the author actually relies on a very similar mechanism to explain this. In fact, to stick with your architecture metaphor, the text demonstrates that the only way to prove a house is weatherproofed is to subject it to a violent storm.
Right, because you don't actually know if the windows will hold until the wind hits them.
Precisely. The author describes a recent event within their community, specifically referring to a tornado tearing through their home.
Now, just to be super clear for you listening, if self-restraint is the weatherproofing, this wasn't a literal weather event, right?
No, no, it was a metaphorical tornado. It is a highly concentrated session where members of the community actively pointed out each other's defects and deficiencies in a group setting.
Wait, a tornado of people pointing out your flaws to your face.
Yep.
That sounds incredibly stressful. I mean, sitting in a room while your peers publicly list off your flaws goes against every single self-preservation instinct we have. It feels like human nature to tense up, cross your arms, and prepare a defense. How does the author expect people to process that kind of intense pressure?
Well, the author is actively testing that self-preservation instinct.
Yeah.
And the expectation is to override it entirely.
Entirely. Like no defending yourself at all.
None. The text frames the ultimate demonstration of self-restraint not as a successful defense, but as total calmness and humility. The author notes with approval that most of the brothers and sisters in the community showed self-restraint by accepting the suggestions and, get this, actually expressing gratitude to the people criticizing them.
So saying thank you for the criticism.
Yes, literally expressing gratitude.
Wow. So the act of defense itself is considered the failure. If I sit in that room and someone points out that I am, say, being selfish with my time, and I immediately start listing all the generous things I did that week, I have failed the test.
Completely. You have failed. The text is unambiguous on this point. Resisting, defending yourself, or arguing back shows a serious lack of self-restraint.
That is a tough pill to swallow.
It really is. But the idea is that accepting valid criticism with a thank you demonstrates that you value personal growth and communal harmony way over your own ego.
Okay, I can see the underlying logic there, assuming the criticism is entirely valid and constructive. It requires a tremendous amount of maturity to swallow your pride and thank someone for pointing out a genuine flaw. But the text doesn't stop at valid criticism, does it?
No, it pushes it much further.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and frankly, much more challenging for a modern reader.
The philosophy pushes the boundaries of emotional control to an extreme, almost absolute limit.
It issues a striking mandate. The text says that even if the defects and deficiencies that others point out are completely out of line with the facts, like even if you're definitively being misunderstood and misinterpreted, you must still accept the criticism with a modest, calm attitude and express gratitude.
Yes, regardless of the facts.
But to a modern listener, this might sound completely counterintuitive. If someone says I did something terrible and I definitively, factually did not do it, my first instinct is to clear my name. Why shouldn't we defend the truth? Isn't passionately defending yourself justified if you are falsely accused?
It's a great question, but the text requires a fundamental shift in how we view the purpose of communication. The goal in this framework isn't about winning a factual debate or establishing objective truth in a social setting.
Then what is the goal?
The goal is mastering the self. The author's underlying philosophy is that the facts of the criticism are totally secondary to your internal reaction.
The facts almost don't matter.
In the specific context of testing your self-restraint, they don't matter at all.
That is wild.
The text explicitly states that if you yell, resist, or complain everywhere about being misunderstood, you have failed the test. True, profound self-restraint is maintaining that modest and calm attitude despite the agonizing frustration of the misunderstanding.
So you just sit there and take it.
You sit there, remain calm, and say thank you. It is about proving that your emotional baseline cannot be hijacked by external inaccuracies. You are proving that your peace of mind is generated internally, not dependent on other people having a perfectly accurate perception of you.
You are proving that the house can withstand the storm, even if the storm is completely uncalled for and blowing from the wrong direction.
I love how you keep bringing it back to the weather. And the text actually provides a remarkably evocative analogy for this exact state of being, the author writes. We can only sail in deep water.
We can only sail in deep water. That is a beautiful image. What is the physical mechanism the author is tapping into there?
Well, consider the physics of water. Think about a shallow puddle. It is highly reactive. A small gust of wind, a dropped pebble, or a sudden movement creates visible, choppy waves.
Right, it just splashes everywhere.
Exactly. It splashes back immediately because there is no volume to absorb the energy. But deep water operates differently. The surface might see a storm, but the sheer volume, the massive depth of the ocean, means the core remains perfectly calm and completely undisturbed.
The storm can't reach the bottom.
Right. And the text argues that only when you cultivate that profound depth, that deep water of self-restraint, will people genuinely respect you and be willing to walk with you or sail with you.
Because nobody wants to sail a ship in unpredictable, reactive, shallow water. You run the risk of running aground the moment the weather turns. You want the stability of the deep ocean.
Exactly.
So the obvious question for you, the listener, is, how does a person actually achieve this Zen-like state of deep water? How do you stop being a shallow puddle that splashes back at every dropped pebble?
Well, fortunately, the author doesn't just present this massive philosophical mountain and leave us at the base to figure it out.
That's a relief.
Yeah. The text actually transitions into a highly specific, rapid-fire checklist. It functions as a how-to guide for building the capacity for self-restraint.
Let's examine that checklist because the scope of it is really fascinating. It starts with massive macro ideals. The author says you need to set up Mahayana's wish, which is noted as a great vow, and follow the ancient and modern saints.
Right. To fully grasp this, we really need to understand the concept of Mahayana's wish. For those unfamiliar, in Buddhist tradition, this is fundamentally the vow to seek enlightenment not just for oneself, but for the benefit of all sentient beings.
So it's very outward-facing.
Exactly. It is the ultimate expression of prioritizing the collective over the individual ego. By setting this great vow and looking to historical examples of saintly behavior, you establish an uncompromising North Star for your emotional control.
Okay, I see.
Prioritizing the group over your own ego is basically the prerequisite for everything else on this list.
If your ultimate goal is the benefit of the whole community, it suddenly makes a lot more sense why defending your own individual ego against a false accusation becomes less important.
Exactly. The ego takes a back seat.
But the text doesn't stay in the clouds. It pivots immediately from ancient saints to very practical, everyday social rules. It tells the reader, don't treat yourself as noble, don't lose your temper, don't bully honest people, and don't make fun of others.
It also adds, don't be unreasonable, don't be unforgiving, don't make casual promises, and don't impose your will on others. These are the stabilizers of any functional society.
Right, these are just the rules of being a considerate person. But then we get into what I would call the behavioral quirks. The text gets surprisingly granular.
It really does zoom in.
It commands.
Yeah.
Don't have loose lips, don't shut yourself up, don't ask for help easily. It specifically says, don't cry and shout, don't make trouble without a reason. And then it gets even more specific. Don't interrupt others casually, don't always teach others. And this one really stood out to me. Don't look sloppy and messy.
Yeah, that juxtaposition of these rules is the absolute key to the author's entire methodology.
But you have emulate the saints and make a grand vow for all sentient beings sitting right next to don't look sloppy and messy and don't interrupt people. It feels a bit jarring. Why does my physical appearance or whether I let someone finish their sentence matter to my spiritual evolution?
Because self-restraint is a muscle. And the author deeply understands human psychology here. You cannot expect to lift 500 pounds if you haven't practiced lifting 5 pounds.
That makes a lot of sense.
If you lack the basic daily discipline required to tuck in your shirt, brush your hair, or simply bite your tongue and let someone finish a sentence, you are not building the neurological pathways required for emotional control.
The micro builds the macro.
Exactly. The pattern here reveals that self-restraint isn't just a lofty mental state you achieve while meditating in silence. It is a holistic, embodied practice.
Like it has to live in your bones.
Right. How can you possibly expect to suppress the overwhelming primal urge to scream when a room full of people falsely accuses you of a character flaw, if you can't even suppress the urge to gossip or the urge to interrupt a casual conversation?
The small ripples prepare you for the storm. If you can't manage the shallow water of a conversation without splashing, you definitely don't have the depth for the tornado.
The author places equal weight on spiritual concepts and everyday manners because they are fundamentally the same practice, just at different scales.
Okay, we have the definitions, we have the ultimate test of the tornado, and we have this rigorous, holistic checklist connecting our deepest spiritual vows to our grooming habits. But as the text concludes, the tone shifts a bit.
It becomes much more urgent.
Yes, there is a sudden urgency introduced. Why is the author pushing these strict rules right now?
The urgency stems from a major structural transition happening within the author's community. The text concludes with a stark warning about moving from what is called the original second home, to the future new oasis for life.
The new oasis for life. It sounds idyllic, like a utopia.
Yeah.
But the text frames it as a place with a remarkably high barrier to entry.
Oh, the highest barrier. The text makes it clear that whatever leniency or grace periods existed in the past in the second home are officially over.
The training wheels are off.
Exactly. In the past, perhaps members of the community could slip by with imperfect upbringing, or they could get away with lacking deep self-cultivation or profound self-restraint. The environment tolerated a certain level of shallow water.
But the new oasis is different.
Very different. The new oasis for life operates on a strictly elevated frequency. The author states unequivocally, "You cannot stay long without a good upbringing, self-cultivation, and self-restraint."
It functions as an absolute entry fee. You simply cannot exist in that elevated space without embodying these three pillars. And the author ends with a direct, earnest plea to the community. Please make the effort.
It is a sobering acknowledgement that this level of personal mastery is grueling. It takes immense, conscious, agonizing effort to override human biology and ego. But the author is arguing that this effort is non-negotiable if you want to participate in this future harmonious community. The tolerance for emotional reactivity is zero.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? You probably aren't moving into a literal new oasis for life or transitioning from a second home. But this text acts as an incredibly powerful psychological metaphor for upgrading the environments we live in right now.
Right, our workplaces, our marriages, our families.
Exactly. You cannot elevate your surroundings or expect to thrive in higher-level, high-trust spaces without first elevating your own emotional control. The environment doesn't magically fix the people. The people hold the standard that creates the environment.
That is a crucial takeaway.
If you bring a reactive, defensive, shallow water mindset into a peaceful oasis, you are the one who ruins the oasis.
The burden of harmony rests entirely on the individual's capacity for self-restraint.
We've covered a profound amount of ground today. We started with the basic foundation of upbringing, learning civilized politeness to avoid visceral disgust. We moved up the ladder to self-cultivation, actively developing a refined mind through knowledge and art to avoid being despised. And finally, we plunged into the deep water of self-restraint, the ability to suppress the ego, maintain a calm attitude, and express gratitude even in the face of a tornado of completely unjustified criticism. We saw how this requires blending the highest spiritual vows with the most granular daily habits, all serving as the entry fee to a more elevated way of living.
It is an uncompromising framework, to say the least, but an immensely rewarding one to analyze. And if we return to that beautiful metaphor of the deep water, there is a final thought to mull over regarding the physics of conflict.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
If true self-restraint means accepting even false criticism with a calm attitude and gratitude, think about what actually happens to the kinetic energy of that false criticism.
Right. Where does all that energy go?
When a storm hits shallow water, it creates a massive chaotic splash. The energy is reflected outward, causing collateral damage, creating waves that hit other people, and perpetuating a cycle of reactivity.
Just chaos everywhere.
But when that exact same violent storm hits an ocean of deep water, the energy isn't reflected. It is simply absorbed into the vastness.
Wow.
The storm loses its power not through violent resistance and not through defending the facts, but through sheer depth. The capacity to swallow the storm without splashing back is the ultimate measure of emotional mastery.
Next time you face a tornado of criticism, ask yourself, are you going to be the shallow puddle that splashes back, or the deep water that simply absorbs the storm? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep sailing in deep waters.